So hello everyone, good morning, good evening for everybody who joined us today on this public consultation webinar on the Uruguayan Forest Certification Scheme. My name is Hubert Inheiser. I'm a technical officer at PEFC International, and it's my pleasure to be your host today on our first Latin American scheme presentation during this revision period. We have only a couple of agenda items on this webinar. First, there will be an introduction about PEFC International from my side, and then we continue with the detailed presentation of the Uruguayan Forest Certification Scheme delivered by PEFC Uruguay, Gabriela Malvarez, and then at the end, we're going to have some questions and answers if it's necessary. So with this, let's get started. PEFC stands for the Endorsement of Forest Certification Systems. That's what the acronym stands for. We are an alliance of independent national forest certification systems under the umbrella of PEFC International. The national forest certification systems are all based on PEFC sustainability benchmark, the international standard and the benchmark standards both. It's a voluntary mechanism promoting sustainable forest management through independent third-party certification. We are very glad that we are the world's largest forest certification system and the provider of 3/4 of the world's certified and sustainably managed forest. Here you can see our global coverage. Up to date, we have 55 members in the PEFC family, which covers 330 million hectares of forest through 49 endorsed forest certification schemes. Well, the Uruguay Forest Certification Scheme was submitted in July 2021 for assessment, and we started the assessment process, which will be then carried out by an independent PEFC registered assessor, yet to be appointed. Part of this process is a 60 days public consultation, which we opened last Monday, so 23rd of August. And all stakeholders, everybody is welcome to submit their comments, their views on the Uruguayan Forest Certification Scheme until 21st of October. Here's the link where you can access the consultation platform. It's important that we receive these feedbacks because all the comments submitted to PEFC International in this way during this public consultation will be considered by the assessor in the assessment report. And with this very short introduction, I concluded the appetizer for the presentation, which to be delivered by Gabriela. And with this, I would like to invite you to share your screen and deliver the presentation. Gabriela, the floor is yours.
Well, good morning, good afternoon to all. Thank you so much for sharing this webinar with us again. I'm going to be presenting this webinar on the revised PEFC Uruguay. Okay, I'm not able, oh, there you go. So first I'm going to go into a very brief introduction to the forest context of Uruguay. Uruguay, as you all know, it's in the south of South America, bordering Argentina and Brazil. And it's, you can see here in this picture, is a very flat grassland kind of landscape with a total surface of 18 million hectares, some 87 of which can be used for agriculture, livestock, and now more recently forestry production. This is a typical landscape of the Uruguayan system now. You can see the grasslands, the most of the surface, and then some native forests by the riversides, and more recently the forest plantations have been included. So traditionally, because of these characteristics of the landscape, Uruguay has been a livestock producing country with some agriculture, but since the forestry law in 1987, this forestry sector has been promoted and plantations have increased from 25,000 hectares to 1.2 million today. This was not the first forestry law, was not the last modification to the law, but it was a starting point for the evolution of the sector, and the promotion of the sector was done through two mechanisms. One, the protection of the native forests. So we are now actually in some 850,000 hectares of native forests. And the second mechanism is the promotion of new plantations in a very structured and ordered way. From the beginning, because of this evolution and because of this beginning of the forestry sector, the plantations, the forestry has been integrated with the existing productions. So the production itself is very efficient. Currently, the forestry sector represents about 3% of the GDP of the country, and the exports amount to nearly 1/5 of the total exports of goods of the country. Directly, the sector employs close to 17,000 people. If we consider indirect employment, the numbers obviously go up, and includes some 1,700 companies, large and small, directly linked to the sector, and more if you consider indirect relationships with other companies and other sections of the production. The forestry sector in Uruguay goes from the obtentions and seeds and plants to final transportation of processed goods. Most of it is exported. I'm having some problem here with the okay, so most of the production is exported to as cellulose in the cellulose industry, and then it's followed by mechanical transformation, fiber production, and other uses as energy are also in the mix. I'm not going to go into more detail of the forestry sector, but I have included in the documentation the latest report of Uruguay 21 about the forestry sector and all its characteristics, which is highly recommended. Now, about the revision itself, this would be our second revision, second scheme revision. PEFC Uruguay Civil Association was created in 2009, and its base was a Sustainable Forest Management Standard developed by UNIT. UNIT is the Uruguayan Institute of Technical Standards. The Forest Management Standard was the 1152. The scheme was based then in this standard, and the system, the PEFC Uruguay system, was endorsed by PEFC in 2011. When the system was endorsed, we already had the 2010 International Forest Management Standard. So we went into the extraordinary assessment to review the system, not as much the system as the standard itself. In the process of the extraordinary assessment, UNIT review the standard, revise the standard, and revise the whole standard. So that revision was used for the 2014 revision, which was actually our first scheme revision. The extraordinary assessment was approved in 2016. The revision was approved and the system re-endorsed in 2018. And by 2019, we were in the 5 years of the date of the standard, the 2014 standard. So we began again with the revision of the system. So for this, our second revision of the scheme, we had 2 objectives. One was to update the requirements established in the previous version of the forest management standard, the 2014. By then we had the approved 2018 International Forest Management Standard, so we had to adapt the requirements to that version. But we also decided to develop an equivalent standard from PEFC Uruguay. To do this, we had to begin with the development of a procedure to review and establish standards, because previously we had been using UNIT rules for a standard setting. So we created this procedure that considered both requirements of PEFC Council and requirements of UNIT, so that we could do both, or we could comply with both objectives at the same time. The process of the revision, very much standard, constitution of a technical committee for the revision of the system, the standard and the system, creation of a draft that was submitted for public consultation, evaluation of the comments received, and approval by the board of directors and publication. For the technical committee, again, this was a technical committee that was going to review, or was going to at the same time do both, update the standard and create a PEFC Uruguay standard. We invited all stakeholders, identified, and made also public invitations to all interested in participating in this process. This is the constitution, final constitution of the technical committee. We have government institutions, academia, social occupations, and companies and independent professionals constituting the technical committee. To facilitate the participation of the members of the committee in the process, we created a section in PEFC Uruguay webpage to post all the documents to be revised and receive comments in there. So the committee was meeting every 2 weeks. 10 days or so before that, the document to be discussed in the following meeting was posted. Comments were received through the web, through email, or personally, and then the section of the document, or the document to be revised, was revised by the committee and posted back again. So we kept doing personal meetings, in-person meetings, and also online meetings. Some of the milestones of the process are here. We began in July 2019, the process, with approval of the beginning of the process by the PEFC Uruguay Board of Directors. First meeting took place in August 2019. And the last meeting, or the document was complete, the revision was completed on March 2020, right before the pandemic began. Public consultation took place from May to July 2020, and we met again, this time only online, for the review of the comments and the final document was then presented to the board of directors for approval in September 2020, published in October of the same year, and we've submitted for PEFC revision in July 2021. The scheme itself, PEFC Uruguay has the two lines of certification: Sustainable Forest Management certification. We have some 600,000 hectares certified in the country, and a chain of custody, we adopted the international standard. We have 7 chain of custody certificates, 3 for good products and 4 for non-good products that are all honeybee productions related to the certified areas of forest management. The standard itself, we didn't, because we have been in this kind of continuous revision, the standard was strong, and it was well set and well adapted to the reality of the country. But so what we did mostly, or the committee did mostly, was to update the contents to align more the standard with the 2018 standard. This is the structure now of our standard. I'm going to go through the sections one by one to indicate where the changes actually were made. Scope of the standard is still the same, did not have any change. The standard applies to forest plantations in forest management units. Forest management units are considered units where up to 60% is forest plantations. The rest could be conservation areas, roads, grasslands, whatever. And like previously, forest plantations with genetically modified trees are excluded from this scope. Again, the scope of the standard did not change. Normative references still the same. Most of the alignment was done obviously with the PEFC 1003 certification of forest management. Terms and definitions, in this case, the terms and definitions did not change much, but previously terms and definitions were included in a separate standard, the 1151. They are now all included in the text of the standard, the same standard. And we have also included all the definitions of the 2018 standard, even those that are not actually mentioned throughout the standard, like say trees outside the forest. So the definitions do not follow the rule. If it's in the standard, it's in the definition. We included all the definitions that might apply at some point at the system. Planning, the section on planning, again, no many changes. What we did mostly was to change the wording and make it more clear, number better the requirements so that they were easily identified, but they did not change the spirit of the previous standard. So this is still part of the planning. In green here are some text or some small requirements that were not expressed in the standard before, and they are now. This is another case, still in the general management plan, did not change much, it's still the same structure. And we did add this point here, again, to comply with the standard within the reality of the national standard. Legal compliance, again, I explained at the beginning, the forest sector is relatively new, and it began already within a very, very strong legal framework. And what happened is, in the previous standard, the only thing that the standard said is the production or the management has to comply with all legal framework applicable to the management. Still says the same, but now it also includes a list of the legislation that applies to the management in Uruguay. It's Annex A. This list is informative. It's very complete, mostly for the national legislation, but it does not exonerate the organization from identifying all legislation applicable, say all local legislation, depending on where the company or the organization is, and updating that legal requirements. But the list is now included in the standard. So in other cases, like for this point here, support, we included the whole section, again, to align better with the standard, since these things were being done by the actual certification by the companies, because they were doing the management according, say, to ISO requirements, but they were not expressed in our text. So this section was completely included in the standard. Criteria and indicators, this section remains the same. The wording has changed to make the requirements more clear and easily identified. The order of the criteria was changed as to align again more with the 2019 standard, and parameters indicated in this, or for each criteria and indicators, are now posted as indications, as suggestions of the basic parameters, but are not exclusive and not the only ones to be applicable by the organization. So that's something that the organization has to define. The criteria and indicators themselves didn't change, so this section still is the same. Performance evaluation of the evaluation, this was a section that again was included completely in the standard. And declarations, again, this was not before, but is still done by the standard 2001 of rules for the trademarks now in its 2020 version. Improvement, another section that was incorporated whole. Annex A, I mentioned before, this is the list of the legal framework applicable to the forest management unit. This includes very much all, they might be new ones, but they includes all the national legal framework. It does not include the local, and again, it does not exonerate the organization of identifying all applicable legal framework and updating it. Annex B, this is normative. This is actually the inclusion of a procedure that was already in the system, but it was in a different document, for the exceptional use of pesticides of the group 1A and 1B. The procedure was in the system and still is as document 9, but now it's in the standard itself. And that's it. So the PEFC certification scheme, it's now conformed by the revised standard and a series of documents for the administration of the system. Both the standard and the documents are published in the webpage, PEFC Uruguay webpage, and they're all included in the documentation for the revision. And with that, the presentation for the revised PEFC Uruguay scheme. and I'll be glad to answer questions and comments.
Muchas gracias, Gabriela. Thank you so much that we had this insight of the Uruguayan scheme and all these details you provided. And with this, the floor is open for clarification questions. I just wanted to emphasize the clarification questions because, as Gabriela mentioned, all the documentation is available not only on the PEFC Uruguay website, but also it's part of the public consultation because all the documents is accessible also on PEFC International. And with this, we are happy to take some questions if there's any. Well, maybe until there will be a question prepared by the participants. I would have one, Gabriela, for you, because your standard is specifically focusing on plantations. And I just wanted to check whether did you have any difficulties or any discussions with regard to the cutoff date requirement in the standard, which is something to be considered by the committee or by your commissioners.
About what?
The cutoff date, which during the conversion and so on, that after 2010 in special conditions, it's not applicable to be receive certification.
No, the thing is, so for the conversions, no, we kept it as the PEFC 2018 standard. And the main thing is our standard follows the national law. So, and that's included in that cut. Yeah, we had that conversation actually for the extraordinary assessment. Yeah, we've been in the process for a while now.
All right, thank you very much. Anybody else would have a question to Gabriela? Maybe it's too early for everyone
No,
over there.
I think no, I think that people in the webinar, there are people that have participated on the process some way or another. So really, really, they know more than I do about the system, which is it's good. It's being well informed.
We discuss a lot.
Yeah, we did.
Well, excellent. In this
Everything
case,
is in the document.
Yeah.
Excellent. In this case, I take the silence as the agreement to everything what was said. It's valid and true. So thank you very much again, Gabriela, for being with us and delivering the presentation for everyone and also for all the participants. I see some other scheme owners joined as well, and I'm very much looking forward to also soon receive their applications, and we can continue the Latin American webinars in this setup. So with this, if there's no other comments, no, then in this case, I wish you the very nice rest of the day and all the best.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Best.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Goodbye.